The year is 2022. To see it written out there on the big screen is something like a science fiction film or a dystopian novel. But that's the number, and here we are. When I was a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, I had this stack of books called Encyclopedias. Some of you may actually remember what those were. And there was a stage when I was fascinated with all things future, mainly space. This is about the time the Star Wars saga was in the theaters, and what was out there for real became a point of discovery in these encyclopedias. And specifically, our star, the sun, was a point of interest. And so I began to write, word for word, the entire section about the sun, even replicating a photo in my crude drawing, reproducing by my own hand the knowledge that these books told about our star in a way that I could own. There was so much for my young mind, I do remember that. And I copied and I copied. And when I ran out of space on the bottom of the sheet, I distinctly remember taping another lined paper to the bottom just to add to my own growing personal journal about the sun. Well, when my hand finally cramped from writing, I hung the full scope of what I'd written on my wall so long that it rolled all the way across the floor, some 6 or 7 feet of paper covered in my loopy handwriting. I was so proud of what I'd done, I have to admit. And I loved looking at my handwritten art. I still do, admittedly. Yet at the same time, I remember feeling this disappointment, knowing that I had completed only a couple of paragraphs of some 15 or so pages of that encyclopedia. It gave me a clearer perspective on all the knowledge that was contained in these volumes of books. Well, about a decade later, when I was just beginning high school in the early 1990s, NASA put out the Hubble telescope, a massive project sent up by the space shuttle. This was something extraordinary. After they fixed the lens, of course. But when those images started coming in, wow, I recall the first photos of that black canvas of space filled with tens of thousands of dots and little specks of light. And then they defined a rectangle and they would zoom in to see these more distant parts of the galaxies and these white blankets which the entire backdrop was made of, only to realize that those were little dots not of stars but of other galaxies, spiral galaxies and elliptical galaxies and nebula of hydrogen and helium gases. There's a lot of carbon out there too. Carbon-12 is not a rare element per se, and it's a particularly sticky element, and it likes to bind itself with itself and other elements, and it creates these fantastic patterns to make all this great stuff like you and me and all the stuff on Earth that makes it possible for us to have a nice home to live in. The possibility that out there in the universe carbon might coalesce in some way like it did here on Earth suddenly felt real. To consider the billions of stars and galaxies with fodder for making life should be enough to change your perspective. And it did for me, as it put those handwritten scrolls about the sun in a very new light. Well, that's enough about me, because I'm not really here to talk about my childhood memories, only that these stick out as some pivotal moments where the way that I saw the world shifted, where the distance between my perspectives about my universe and what it looked like and what it really is diminished entirely. There are many reasons why and how our perspectives can change. And I spent a lot of time in my life in classes, in my theory of knowledge classes on epistemology, talking about this. But if I'm to offer one message for this year, it's to go forth into the world to deal more fully with this crudeness of reality. Now, I can't underscore this importance enough. Indeed, this epistemological problem is, it's the way that I teach every day. It's the way to understand perspectives. This goes down the line in all the subjects: math, science, humanities, history. Everything that we teach and learn about is a way that we register the world around us. But there's so much more to find out in terms of perspectives. For as much as we try to educate ourselves every single day about these many perspectives and disciplines, There are many who will not see the world as you see it, or as I see it, who function on incomplete information, or people who are too firmly anchored in their beliefs to see and recognize other realities, or who are too ignorant of something that you may know, or vice versa. And even those who are corrupted by ideologies or demagogues or the whimsical nature of their most primitive emotions. There are many reasons why everyone may not see the world as you do. But that does not make us powerless. You see, I wanted to talk about perspective because it's one of the most difficult aspects of gaining wisdom. You must be willing to open your mind, to empathize with individuals you may not agree with, and to seek the gaps in your own views of the world so that you are able to change perspective, if necessary. For gaining perspective tends toward truth. You alone are responsible for this challenge, and I can't underscore it more than ever today as it seems so difficult to achieve. You alone will know whether or not you're being honest enough with yourself to be able to pursue the correct path and gain the correct perspective. Good luck, 2022.